Alright, welcome back to The Eminence in a Shadow anime review, episode number 2. My original plan for this one was just do 2 episodes, but I had to do 3 because 5 was the inclusion to basically the story that was going on here. So in these episodes, we're introduced to basically about 5 characters. One of whom gets killed off at the end of this one. His name is Zion. Yep. He is basically, he is the fiance of one of the characters. Well, he's betrothed to her because of political reasons. Yes. A 28-year-old man is betrothed to a woman who's basically in mid-teens. Yeah. Now, he's voiced by Scott Gibbs. He does a pretty good job voicing him. We also see the debut of 2 other characters who, pretty much after the next episode, they pretty much do nothing. Like, they're basically minor characters. We have Hiroru, we have Selti Eltil, and Pao Tato. Yep, they're basically just, friends of Clyde. Now, Clyde, he has now, apparently 3 years passed by, he's able to join the academy. So he's able to get his own uniform. He goes to school, but he has to live in a cheap apartment building off campus because the royals do not want the peasants near them. Yes, even I found that ridiculous. Look at a series like the Chronicles of, basically the Aristocrats that Early Adventure. People who are basically nobility, not nobility, are basically treated as equals. While in this series, it's very much divided, and they describe sort of a medieval society, but it looks a lot like the 19th century. Kind of, it was still going. So basically, he arrives, goes to school, and because apparently they place a bet and they have to do a fake confession to this woman, Alexa Major, who happens to be the younger sister of the prince, who's basically a princess, the princess of their kingdom, and probably presumably second in line for the throne. So, you have a guy confessing to her, and she rejects him, and the bet is basically he confesses to her, and she has to reject him. But instead, when he does it, weird fashion, apparently she accepts it. And then, of course, she arranges to have him transfer fencing classes from the bottom one to top one. Also, while they're preparing for their little sparring match, she copies his stretches. Yes, seriously. She copies his stretches, even his sword technique. Oh, in case you're curious, though, is Claire in these episodes? Yes, except she makes very sparse appearance. Like, her appearances in these 3 episodes are nothing more than a cameo. Just to say that she's here. I would have liked this scene, basically a scene where you have Clyde basically reunite with his sister at the school, but nope, we don't see that here. So they spar for a while, and of course the class ends, and of course basically is about the whole thing of Zion being basically her fiance. She's like 16, he's like 28. Yeah, so and of course they go on a date, and apparently that apparently he ends up being a dog to her, like a puppy. Over her giving her gold coins, and of course going to get some ice cream, and then pretty much he tells her basically he likes her sword style, and she doesn't like it very much, and then she just leaves, and then the very next day he's arrested for kidnapping. You're thinking, what? Yeah, it turns out he's actually framed for basically kidnapping, but they're called Diablos. Yeah, they're the main bad guys of the series. So, yeah. And of course, Claire, her thing is she wants to go free her brother because she's got a brother complex. Yeah, she's obsessed with her brother. Yep. So, yeah, and of course, first time she tries to do it, the person trying to stop her is a blonde woman, and she nearly breaks her arm in the process. So after he's beaten up and stabbed in the thigh with a frickin' spike, he give back his clothes. Apparently he got shit on his underwear off screen. And then, of course, basically he decided to, they let him go, and then he's like, And then a blonde woman says later. Turns out it's actually Alpha. Yep. Who comes by his apartment. Yep. Gives him some food. And like, oh yeah, you owe me for that sandwich. That was my sandwich. And basically, the Shadow Guard is looking for the princess along with the base of called Diablos. So he basically, get this, decides to put up stuff from his world. I'm like one of them is basically a painting of Van Gogh of the screaming person, like the whole thing of the whole thing, doing that. Yes, somehow he got apparently he also got his hands on a bottle of wine from the south of France. This gorgeous chair he sits on was his throne, and Delta is there. Ooh, we're basically going to go do operations. He writes down basically what goes on here. So he goes out, and somehow he manages to find location where the princess, apparently she tells him a laboratory, and there's this, creature who's being experimented on. Yeah. And, ooh, it's take your blood. Because it's royal blood and needed for the Valiant Demon. 4 reasons. The Finch Shadow Guard launches their full-scale attack on the bases. He decides to panic and basically inject a big dose of blood into the Chimera, turning the thing into a monster, and the monster frees her. And of course she gets trapped. And then she steps out and finds out that apparently the person behind this particular kidnapping is none other than her fiancé, Zion, who beats her in sword combat, and then Shadow shows up. And then, of course, he fights him. And, of course, she's watching from a distance the whole thing. And at one point, you have Zion using the same thing that the previous guy used in just episode 2 when Claire got kidnapped. So, and by the way, before this, she manages to, all the explosion going on here, she manages to free the cuffs. Because of all the explosion going on. She manages to find the keys and free herself from the magic cuffs, basically her hands and ankles. And then, of course, Zion goes monster, hulks up, and then eventually he's beaten by Shadow by using an atomic explosion that basically takes out, what appears to be 4 levels of underground and basically destroying some buildings in the process. And the explosion comes into a canal. Now, unknown if there's any people killed in this explosion. But it is a lot. A lot of... if you think about it from a U.S. currency perspective, that amount of damage is basically worth about probably $1 billion worth of damage right there. Maybe more. Because that is a lot of that's a lot of cloud damage. So Iris herself finds her. Iris is basically Alexa's sister, and then of course you have where Iris tells 2 of her subordinates. Names are Glenn and Marco to form a special investigate these 2 organizations that are basically plaguing her kingdom. So right afterwards, right next day, basically, Alexia basically wants to make the relationship official with, basically back together with Clyde, where she admits she genuinely loves him. He rejects her, then he proceeds to slice, basically, his shoulder off, though he heals himself. Then he just... And eventually becomes a mystery of the campus, the bodiless murder. And then him, still bloody, runs into a new character named Sherry Barnett. Voiced by Brittany Kowalski. Hooray! It's been a while since I've actually heard her voice, basically, in something. I think the last time I watched that was new was Beaufrey. Yeah, that was the last one, surprisingly. But great to hear her voice, and we have about 5 more to go. And then we're done with these, and then we'll basically take a little break, to basically work on some light novels, then come back to the season to basically finish it up. Yep, so yeah, that's a typical view. Next time, I'm just going to do a comic corner, and we'll go straight to One Piece, okay? Next video, bye.